Why would a man leave his apartment 3 times on a rainy night with a suitcase and come back 3 times?
Welcome to the Mind Your Movies podcast. I'm Ryan,
I'm Shane.
and today we're talking single location movies. We're starting
Yes.
off with Wreck from 2007, and then we'll be talking about Rear Window, the Alfred Hitchcock classic. This episode is, of course, called Rear Window to symbolize that we are starting with Wreck and watching these two
Yes.
movies.
Yes. It is funny because Rec technically is not a single location movie by technicality, but that's okay. It's close enough.
Yeah. Yeah, it's hard when we're picking these sometimes because I had seen Rec before, but I kind of forgot how much of it is at I mean, not really that much, but um, percentage wise, because it's a short movie. There's a decent amount of the movie at the fire department, but oh
That's
well.
okay. That's okay. Close enough. Close enough.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, very cool couple movies I think we're going to be talking about. We are going to get into spoilers for those later on, but before we talk about the movies, we're going to talk about a couple of things we've seen recently. Um, Ryan, I don't know if you wanted to start us off.
Um, well, I'll start with I've been watching the Wes Anderson shorts on Netflix from a couple of years ago, maybe.
I
The
think last year,
wonderful
maybe.
story of Henry Sugar, and there's a couple other shorter stories that he has on there, and they're wonderful. Like uh, the kind of stage management in them is really interesting. It's a really wonderful, like uh, creative way to tell the story. So I think they can get a little. Some of them, like there's a few of them, and I think like the Rat Catcher got a little. I didn't really love that one, but overall, I mean, I think there's four of them altogether, and I haven't seen one of them yet. Uh, but they're pretty awesome, and they're pretty short. So the longest of them, the wonderful story of Henry Sugar, is like something like 47 or so minutes, and then the others are all like 17 minutes. So if anyone has Netflix out there and hasn't checked them out, I would totally recommend these. They're way more interesting than I thought they would be. So
Yeah, those are really great. I remember watching them when they came out, whenever that was, a year or two ago. And yeah, they're really good. I think Poison was my favorite one.
that's the
Uh,
one I haven't seen.
there
Yes,
you
I'm
go.
going into a good one. Awesome.
Yeah. Yeah, that one's really good from what I remember. But yeah, obviously the Henry Sugar one is longer, so it's kind of a little, I don't know. It has that advantage of just having more stuff than the others than some of the others. But yeah, they're really good. I'm glad you went back to watch them. And they're all super short, so you can kind of just watch them once, watch a nice short one a day or something.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, all right. Well, I don't know. The thing is, I going into this, I watched all four Rec movies. I watched the original, rewatched the original Rear Window, and then I watched the remake of Rear Window. So I watched so many movies unnecessarily for this episode that it really took up a lot of time. I watched Rec 3, Rec 4. What am I doing with my time? Anyway, but I watched In a Violent Nature. The
Oh.
horror movie came out like last year. Uh, Sort of a slasher from the perspective of the killer, and it was pretty good. I definitely, I don't know. It was interesting. I liked it as sort of an experiment,
Mhm.
but I don't know that. Well, the thing is, like, it's trying to be a slasher movie, and kind of something a part of a slasher movie is like the characters and story are usually not very interesting. Um, so like in order to be a slasher movie, it kind of has to do that, but then it makes the movie less interesting to me because it didn't really have any interesting characters or like story going on, you know? But it was well shot, and I like the look of it and everything like that, but I didn't love it. But
Yeah, I can definitely see what you're saying. I remember seeing that one. I think I saw it twice in theaters. Um, Mostly because the first time I was like, uh, I was kind of taken aback and was like, okay, that was really interesting, but like it was really slow, and there was like, because it's a slasher, but you're not really with the main characters during all the beginning stuff, right? um, which I guess makes them not the main characters, but whatever. It's
Yeah,
a
it's kind
yeah,
of weird because the killer is the main character at the beginning, but then as you move toward the end, we sort of get to be with a main character. Um, but
right.
we don't really know anything about them and stuff like that. So yeah.
Yeah. And so I wanted to rewatch it just because I was like, I wasn't sure if like I was kind of missing something or if you know, I don't know. But and then I kind of came to the internal agreement that like, yeah, it's just it's a cool experiment and I like that. But yeah, it's definitely not like a campy like I wouldn't watch this instead of Friday the 13th for like a campy watch party or anything.
Yeah, there is one very cool kill in the middle. Very creative and depraved.
Yes. I know exactly which one you're talking about.
Yeah, okay. Uh, so yeah,
Yeah.
I mean, I think it's worth watching for, I mean, if people are horror fans, they probably already saw it, to be honest. But if you're into slasher movies and horror movies, it's definitely worth watching. But I didn't really love it.
Yeah, it's one of these like Shutter produced ones, right? So Shutter produced like four movies last year or something, and I remember I forget all of them now, but I remember being pretty impressed each time. Uh,
Yeah, I wasn't sure if they like produced it or they just bought it like out of
Maybe
festivals and stuff. But either way, it was like released on Shutter. But I
yeah,
watched it on it's on Hulu now, at least in the
yeah,
US. So that's where I watched it.
nice. Um, so I I'll throw in a I don't have too many. I mean, I've watched a lot of stuff, but most of it's kind of like I watched The Accountant, rewatched The
Mhm.
Accountant. I'm gonna watch The Accountant 2, hopefully before it's out of theaters, but whatever.
Hmm.
But I did see Until Dawn, um,
Oh yeah,
which
one of your most
is
anticipated of the summer.
that's right. I mean, I've got to bring it up. Um, it's if anyone hasn't seen that most anticipated list, make sure you go back a couple episodes and take a watch at that. But this was on my list of top five most anticipated. It is based on a based on a video game by the same name, and they do like a kind of an interesting way to show the video game's all about like choices matter. So it's one of these like more cinematic, less gameplay, more like QTEs and stuff like that in the game. And so, in order to represent that in the movie, they kind of have like a Groundhog Day like time loop thing, and it's really interesting. I do feel like for one of my most anticipated movies, I was a little ambitious on what I was hoping for.
Mhm.
It was definitely like a teen slasher movie. I'd say it's probably worth watching. I think fans of the game uh, will probably get more out of it than not fans, but I think it was a fine experience either way, probably, and would probably recommend it if people are into this type of movie. It's like definitely a teen slasher movie. It's not. Uh, I mean, also if you liked like Happy Death Day or something, you might be into just the Groundhog Day ness of it. Um, there is kind of a letdown at some point about that, I would say, but I would say it's worth the watch if you have like the time. I don't
Hmm.
know if I would even recommend necessarily rushing to the theaters to see it. It'll probably go on streaming pretty soon. But
Yeah. Yeah, it's kind of interesting because the whole theory of like you're basically respawning like in a video game is kind of a cool idea, but then it's kind of the opposite of the Until Dawn video game. It's like that's common in most video games, but you actually are choosing the one video game where that isn't what happens. So it's kind of like, I don't know, kind of ironic.
yeah, yeah. So it's a cool idea. I think they did some cool stuff in it, and yeah, I don't know. Give it a try when it comes out on whatever streaming service it'll be on in a month or two.
Hmm. Nice. I also watched a new movie. It's straight to Netflix. It's called Havoc, directed by Gareth Evans, who directed the Raid movies, and starring Tom Hardy. I was definitely looking forward to this movie. From what I understand, they shot it in like 2021, And then there were issues with like, well, I guess COVID and maybe strikes and stuff like that. And then they did reshoots, I believe, last year. Uh, and then now the movie's finally coming out. And it turned out it wasn't very good. It was there are some cool action sequences, I guess. It's kind of silly, very over the top action, not a lot of reloading, a lot of just spraying bullets everywhere with very little reloading. Um and ultimately like the story is super convoluted and there's a lot of explaining this person's connected to this person because of this and blah, blah, blah. But ultimately I didn't really care about any of the characters or anything that was going on, so it just felt like a lot of time wasted explaining this convoluted story that I didn't actually care about. um and yeah, there's some weird CGI in the movie. I don't know, it was a little bit disappointing. It wasn't terrible or anything like that, but I think I have a pretty high expectation of like Gareth Evans in an action movie just because the Raid and the Raid 2 are so awesome. So this definitely, uh, and the action really wasn't like that much worse. It was still pretty like entertaining and engaging. All the action sequences. It was mainly the story around it and the characters where I was let down.
Yeah. I've seen kind of, I think I saw your review a little earlier on. When you watched this. This was on your like honorable mentions list, I think, right? For that
I
episode that we did.
I probably mentioned it. Yeah, I didn't put it on. I definitely didn't put it on there because like it was just straight to Netflix.
Yeah.
But yeah, this is definitely something I've been looking forward to, and I was like, kind of a shame that this didn't work out. I mean, Tom Hardy
Yeah.
and Gareth Evans, that sounds like that would be pretty awesome. But
Yeah. Yeah, it is interesting that we're at the point where we're actually talking about some of the things from that episode. That's cool. Um,
yeah.
uh, well, I'll mention one more thing, which is The Surfer, which is a new Nick Cage movie, um, directed by Lorcan Finnegan, who also directed Vivarium, um, with Jesse Eisenberg not too long ago. Um,
Did you see
well,
that?
I did,
Okay.
and it's very weird. And uh, I think this movie does good weird movie stuff too. And um,
I
have you?
haven't seen any of his movies, so yeah.
Those are the only two I've seen. Although he's done Nocebo, which I've heard also is like worth watching. Um, but The Surfer is kind of about Nick Cage. Uh, kind of goes to this like um surf beach, I guess, and parks there, and then uh the people there are like very like locals only. There's a lot of like localism, and so he keeps getting like shooed away from the beach essentially. And so the movie takes place entirely on the uh the parking lot and the beach front. And so it's kind of a single location movie actually.
Oh
Um
wow.
because the parking lot and the beachfront are actually, you can always see them together. So it's not like but and there's some good Cage stuff here. Um, One very iconic scene that I think will live on in Cage uh, fame. Um, and because it's Cage, his mental state is deteriorating during the movie and stuff. And I would say it was a very good movie, with a slightly disappointing ending, in my opinion. But not that that should shy people away from watching it. It was cool though watching this. The movie theater I usually go to had like a live streamed Q&A with Nick Cage after the movie. So Nick Cage and the director were like uh, at some movie theater in California, and they were like live streaming this to like 600 theaters or something. So pretty cool to listen to Nick Cage talk about making a movie.
Nice. Hell yeah.
Yeah.
That's cool. I didn't realize this was like already out. It's like in theaters now. So maybe I'll have to check it out. It seems cool.
Yeah, definitely worth watching.
Hell yeah. All right, cool. Well, one thing that I watched Ali, the Muhammad Ali biopic by Michael Mann, and it was really good. It was the the beginning is pretty great, and then it becomes a little bit like biopic. We have to cover the iconic moments. Of obviously Muhammad Ali has so many like iconic moments and fights and sayings and stuff like that in his life. Uh, but yeah, it was really good. I just wish it got a little more into like what Muhammad like the interior life of Muhammad Ali. But I think he's such a big character, and he was so charismatic on TV and in like his fight press conferences and stuff. Like he had this charismatic persona, but I don't know, and this is probably part of in real life also. I don't know that a lot of people, I don't know that he let a lot of people in on like his, his interior life, kind of like how he felt. He kind of just had this persona, and that was his public persona. So the movie does a really good job of portraying that. And Will Smith is, well, hold on. But so the movie does a good job of portraying that, but I wish it got a little deeper into him as a person. But it's interesting that Will Smith is playing Ali, this sort of persona, because I feel that actually the same way about Will Smith, in that like is this big charismatic movie star, but at the same time, like everything he does feels a little bit calculated, feels a little bit like putting forward a certain persona. And I'm like, what is sort of, I feel the same way about Tom Cruise, where like they're these big movie stars, but they don't necessarily feel like super vulnerable within that. Obviously they are, they're people, they have like their own insecurities and all that type of stuff, but we're never able to see that. Almost like The Rock too. Like The Rock has a similar type of thing, I feel like. Although I will say that the trailer for the Smashing Machine came out, and that actually looks really good. So
Nice.
I'm looking forward to that. But
Nice.
uh, but yeah, Ali, really good movie. That's like 15 years old, and I just watched it because it was one of the last Michael Mann movies I haven't seen, and yeah, it turns out it's really good.
Excellent. Nice.
um, did you have anything else you wanted to mention? Or
Um, no, 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 not really.
all right,
Um, yeah,
I'll just say real quick, I rewatched The Squid and the Whale, and really good movie, great movie. Would recommend for anyone to watch it. Very like realistic and very personal, uh, sort of depiction of growing up and coming of age and divorce. Uh, and then I watched a short film on the Criterion channel called A Certain Morning. It's uh, from Burkina Faso, and I think it's the first like movie made in Burkina Faso, maybe or something like that. Uh, and really, really good short film. There's a guy who's going out to the uh, well, I don't know, to sort of, I don't know what you would call it exactly, because he lives in sort of a village, and then he goes out to a more rural area without any houses or anything. He's making chairs. And then something happens. I'm not going to spoil. It's only a 15-minute short film, so I can't really spoil it. But some shit happens, and it's pretty like my jaw dropped. I was like, oh my God, was not expecting that. And it was turned out to be a really great short film. So if anyone out there is looking for a short film to watch on the Criterion channel, I would definitely recommend that. It's called A Certain Morning.
excellent. Wow, cool. Lots of good short film recommendations, I feel like.
Yeah, 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 definitely.
Nice.
The Criterion channel has like so many short films on there. They can be kind of like buried within there, like if they're not featured on like the home screen in any of the like collections and stuff like that. But if you know what to look for, you can just search for it. So I would recommend that one.
Excellent. Cool. Anything else?
Oh yeah. No, I just wanted to get those out there. I mean, I
Cool.
also watched The Civil War on Drugs, the Whitest Kids You Know feature movie thing, I guess that was at the end of their TV show, and that was funny. I like that. That was a good time. It's on Tubi,
Nice.
so anyone can go watch that if you want.
Nice, nice. This is of course not coming out on Star Wars Day, but it is Star Wars Day today. So I am currently trying to watch through the original series. So I watched the first one maybe like a week ago. So I'll watch episode 5 again today, Empire. Um
Nice.
yeah.
Do you have, because I know you have the despecialized version of the original, the like fan
Yes.
made despe, do you have that for the A
Whole
whole trilogy?
trilogy, baby. Yeah.
Nice.
So
Okay, that'll be cool.
I'll be watching Empire without that crazy weird thing flying around Jabba's palace,
Mm. Is
whatever
that
that thing
in
is.
is that in Return of the Jedi? Or is that no, it could be in there. I don't remember.
No,
Return of the Jedi
honestly,
has
yeah, I forget. There's so much there's so much junk thrown into these.
yeah.
Um, but
Return of the Jedi, I think, is the worst, like the most negatively affected by all the CGI edits that he
yeah,
did.
I think you're right also. I think it is in Return. The weird thing in
The like
Jabba's
singing, the
palace. Yeah, yeah.
singing. Yeah, I think that's
Yeah.
in Return of the Jedi. Yeah.
Uh, well, excited to watch the whole trilogy without any of that stuff. So,
Yeah, yeah, that'll be cool. Um,
um,
yeah.
well,
Did
oh yeah,
also Revenge of the Sith like went back in theaters and it was like a big hit. Like people were loving it. Did you
no, I
have
didn't
it?
see it.
Need to, you didn't end up going? No. I was on
No,
the fence. I was like, it's definitely my favorite of the original or of the prequel trilogy. But yeah, I didn't end up going to see it in the theater.
I also had thought about it. The theater's so convenient for me, and the tickets. So I pay for like the monthly pass, so I can go to the movies for free. Um, and so I was like, I mean, I could just go and see it, but I did not.
Yeah,
Just not the time. Um,
yeah, I get that. It's kind of interesting because well, I was born in '97. It came out in '05, so I was 8, and that is definitely one of the first, probably the first movie going experience that I remember like clearly in my mind. I'm sure maybe I went to see some other movie before that, like that I just don't remember, but I remember we got like we got all the whatever the 5 previous movies on DVD and we watched them all and then we went and saw Revenge of the Sith in the theater and that was one of my earliest movie going experiences or that I remember.
That's awesome. I also have an early theater going experience for Revenge of the Sith. That's like probably the first movie I remember in theaters too. Um, Definitely one of those like pieces of our childhood. I would say that's like you know culturally relevant, which I think is
Yeah,
why it gets a lot of love, which is good.
yeah, people, yeah, definitely a lot of nostalgia for it. The Zoomers love the prequels, basically. I don't. They do.
um,
I mean, dude, look
yeah,
on Letterboxd. Revenge of the
no, I
Sith has
know.
like a 3.9 or something ridiculous. Like its average rating is crazy. And
Yeah,
yeah.
no, I'm sure tomorrow when I go into school and the kids talk about their weekend, a lot of kids tomorrow are probably going to talk about having seen one of the Star Wars movies, and unfortunately, it's not going to be like Empire or anything. It's going to be either a sequel or a prequel or something.
Yeah. Uh, I at some point I want to watch them in numerical order because I think I've always watched them in release order. I'm like, you know what? Maybe it'd be fun to watch them in numerical order at some point. But then that means I'd have to sit through like Attack of the Clones. I'm like, I don't really want to do that.
Yeah, and then you have to listen to Obi-Wan talk about not remembering R2D2 to his face, and then like
Right, yeah.
in episode 4 or whatever.
Yeah,
Um,
like it wouldn't make any sense in that order. Yeah, yeah, that's
yeah,
a
there's
fair
some
point.
goofy stuff that like they just totally ignore, but yeah,
Yeah. All right. Well, that's our little chat. That was our little
yeah,
intro chat. What have we watched recently? I guess we should get into the movies.
that's it.
We
It's time. It's time to go to a single location.
yes.
Um, but first we're at a firehouse because
Yeah,
we got to get there. Um, so
so
this, yeah,
spoiler warning for Rec and Rear Window. We're gonna talk spoilers. And yeah, Ryan, Rec was your choice, so if you wanna get into it, go ahead.
yeah, Wreck, 2006 movie. Uh, this is a kind of a very prominent found footage movie. I think some people consider this to be uh, one of the best in the found footage genre. It's a Spanish movie. Uh, it's co-written and directed by um, Jean Balaguerro and Paco Plaza. Um, and very notably, it stars Manuela uh, Velasco Diaz, who is actually like kind of low time movie star at the time, or TV star, but most prominently at the time was a TV reporter. Um, and she plays here a TV reporter. So there we go. Very easy role to take on, I assume. Um, and and just culturally, this kind of, it did spawn the four of the series. Um, it was very prominent in found footage. 2007 is the year of the Poughkeepsie tapes, George Romero's Diary of the Dead. It's the year of Paranormal Activity, which is one of the highest grossing movies of all time. Um, and well, sorry, highest grossing
Most
budget.
profitable
Yeah, most profitable. Sorry.
yeah, in relation to it, because it probably made like 500 times its budget or something like that,
Yeah,
right?
exactly. Like 400 and something times when it costs like $50,000 to make.
Yeah.
Um, and the next year is Cloverfield in 2008. So it's like right there in the found footage kind of resurgence in the late 2000s. Um, and it also spawned an American kind of take on it, I guess, not remake, but like take on it of Quarantine. And then Quarantine actually got its own sequel too. So
Yeah.
Quarantine was 2008, and then its sequel that
Have
I
you
don't know
s-
if anyone's seen, but that's
have you seen
2011.
Quarantine?
I did. I've seen Quarantine before, long ago. I think when I watched Rec, maybe the first time I watched Quarantine, and I didn't watch any of the sequels for Rec or Quarantine sequel. Um, but Quarantine, these might not have even been out at the time, to be honest. I don't know. 2008 might have been when I watched. I don't know, whatever.
Yeah.
Um, but Rec is a nice short 78 minutes.
Oh yeah,
So
which is
good.
good because yeah, it's very chaotic.
Yeah.
It's a very chaotic movie. Obviously, with it being found footage, there's a lot of people yelling and screaming at each other. Um, but yeah, overall, it's pretty well done as like a found footage thing. Obviously, the TV reporter thing is a pretty smart device of, well, this is why they keep recording and they keep saying over, they're like, you got to record this so people know, or we gotta we gotta show this to people, stuff like that, so that they're justifying why they're recording in such a scary situation. And at the end with the night vision, it makes the camera very crucial to what's happening. Yeah.
Yeah, definitely. And the night vision becomes kind of influential in the genre. This and Paranormal Activity in the same year kind of both take that on, and that whole, I mean, the green, like the green screen, not green screen, but the green effect on the screen just really works in those two movies, and then it's adapted in like every found footage later on. But
Yeah,
yeah,
that scene at the end definitely like was very effective, very creepy, very, obviously we're not talking, whatever, we'll talk about some other stuff first before we talk about
yeah,
the ending, but the ending sort of like bumped it up like a half a star for me probably because I was like, oh, this is creepy, like this weird fucked up thing in the shadows and it's all dark. Like it was very well executed, that the
yeah,
climactic sequence. Um, but yeah, I mean, the also this has a way bigger cast than I expected.
yeah.
uh like for whatever, I guess I've known about this movie for like a while, but I've never watched it. And I always just saw the image of, oh, the TV reporter, and for whatever reason I thought it was like, oh, a TV reporter and her cameraman go to like an abandoned like warehouse or something, and there's like creepy shit that goes on. But so I thought it was just gonna be like the two of them. And then it turns out they're in an apartment complex and there's all these residents and there's the firefighters and there's the police and whatever. So there's a lot. It was just a lot more people than I expected going in.
Yeah, which is one of the things I think that helps leave its legacy kind of among, Paranormal Activity only really has two people really. There's like a priest that comes in at one point, but it really has two people. Um and which is great. It's a really like effective way to make it incredibly low budget movie. Um but but that doesn't work for everyone, and it doesn't work for every movie. And it would have been really weird if these guys went to apartment building and there was nobody there, right? And it wouldn't really work because the this movie turns out to be a zombie movie, and
Yeah.
that actually on its own also definitely increases the number of people that you need to make the movie. It means that you need things like makeup artists and things like that, right? So there's all sorts of other stuff that go into it when you wanted to make it that that type of movie, which is cool.
Yeah. Because if it's ghosts, you can kind of just things go bump in the night. It's creepy, but you don't actually need it's a lot. You can save a lot of money because you don't see anything, obviously.
Right. Yeah, you just have string, invisible strings on some chairs and you're
Yeah,
good, right? But
yeah, yeah. Yeah, true.
um
That's a good point. And this is definitely, it seemed very influenced by 28 Days Later to me,
yeah.
of the digital cinematography and the sort of chaotic camera work. Obviously, 28 Days Later isn't found footage, but it has that sort of vibe that is
Mhm.
immersive. Um, and yeah, with the zombies spread through like an infection and a virus and all that kind of stuff. It seemed to me to be very influenced by 28 Days Later.
Yeah. And it's also uh I think so it came out the same year as Diary of the Dead, which is George Romero's found footage zombie movie. So I would wonder if there was, you know, uh kind of cross discipline influence there of kind of a very prominent zombie movie maker making a found footage movie. I'm sure word gets around and maybe uh, that helped these guys a little bit.
And I wondered, I mean, 28 Days Later, I feel like was a pretty big hit, like kind of very influential. I think Blair Witch and 28 Days Later kind of seemed to like set the things in motion of like found footage and like digital cinematography being used in horror movies in like and then now we're by the time 2007 comes around, it's like a bunch of movies are coming out in this style.
Yeah, definitely. And that's like, I mean, again, like I only named, some what like four, maybe five movies, but I mean, I'm sure if you looked up 2007 and 2008 and you just looked up found footage movies that came out those years, there's way more, right? Like there's probably a bunch of bad ones, but there's also just a ton of found footage movies that came out at this time, and most of them, well, not most, but at least the ones I mentioned, I think generally like live on pretty well in their legacy. And people were trying to do like creative stuff with found footage at this time, right? Like Cloverfield, a totally different take on found footage. Wreck and Diary of the Dead taking into that zombie approach. Like you said, probably inspired by the handheld shot on video um, aesthetic of 28 Days Later. Uh, and yeah, I think a lot of this stuff just pays off really well in terms of the scares. There's I remember the marketing for Paranormal Activity with there was like shots like uh night vision shots of movie theaters, and everyone in the theater was like screaming, and it was like the scariest movie ever made. And it's like, yeah, whatever, but
Mhm.
but clearly effective, right? I mean, it made the movie so much money. So
Yeah. Yeah, definitely. Yeah, I haven't seen any of the Paranormal Activity movies actually. I'm not a big found footage guy. It's not a genre that I like uh gravitate toward, I guess. You know,
mhm.
I've seen Chronicle, which I remember being pretty good. I've seen The Visit, which is one of my least favorite M. Night Shyamalan movies, which is saying something because he's got a few stinkers. But so yeah, it's kind of a mixed bag. And I've seen the first three or actually four of the like George Romero of the Dead movies.
Mhm.
Obviously there's the original three and then there's like Land of the Dead, whatever, Diary of the Dead and something else.
Yeah.
So I saw Land of the Dead at one point, but I haven't seen Diary of the Dead or the other one. But yeah, so I don't know. I'm just not a big found footage guy. So watching this, I was like, I liked it. I definitely can acknowledge that this is probably one of the better found footage movies, but still, I didn't like necessarily love it.
Mhm.
I definitely found it good, and
Yeah.
like the ending was very good, but I don't know. Something about found footage movies. I I think it's the chaoticness of it. I just can't like love. I don't know.
Yeah. No, totally. I mean, I think that's why at this time they were experimenting with different things, like Oren Peli's Paranormal Activity. A lot of that movie is actually on a tripod, right? And
It's like
because
surveillance footage, right?
exactly, and I think Paranormal Activity like 3 actually uses like those home security cameras, and so um, like this was like kind of the time for found footage to really experiment and try to appeal to people that wouldn't normally like the Blair Witch shaky stuff, right? And so I think that's part of why Paranormal Activity did so well, whereas this it definitely has less shaky cam than a lot of found footage movies, but there are still, I mean, it's a TV reporter with a camera that's running around, right? So like
Yeah.
there's still those moments. But it does in a way feel authentic where it doesn't feel like it's necessarily just a handheld like in Cloverfield or Blair Witch, and more of like this big camera, like TV not tripod, but like shoulder rest camera.
Yeah.
Because it feels much less shaky than some of the other things.
Yeah, true. Yeah, this is definitely not like gonna make you seasick while you're watching it, kind of a thing. Like, I mean, maybe it could, but to be honest, but not as bad as some other movies. And like I said earlier, like they have good justification for them filming, which I think was very smart. So you're not wondering like, why is this guy filming on his phone or whatever? Like during this crazy situation? Like, wouldn't you just be running away or whatever? Um, but yeah, I think they do a pretty good job of like making the story, making everything line up, like them being trapped in there and they can't get out, and they like are trying to get out, but they really can't. Like it feels like they did a good job justifying putting all these characters in this unique and stressful situation.
Yeah. And so I guess I mean like real quick, I should run through maybe just quickly the plot, like just the main points. Again, it's a pretty brief movie, but there's some stuff that happens. So this TV crew, they're called While You're Sleeping, which is kind of fun. Um, they are following, they're shadowing a couple of firefighters for the night, and um, they kind of talk about hoping that there's some dramatic call or something because the firefighters are like, usually our nights are kind of boring, right? Like we don't. Sometimes we go save a pet, they say, or something, right?
Yeah.
And they get a dramatic call, and so they go to a apartment building because some lady is screaming. I think is the reason. And when they get there, like everyone's in the lobby because everyone's like, "Oh, like we didn't know what to do," blah blah. And there's a couple cops in the ladies' room, so they meet up with them, and the lady bites one of the cops and one of the firefighters. Um, so they all rush back downstairs. Um, then they try to get out and they realize they're locked in. And there's like police and special forces and whatever hazmat people or whatever, uh, whoever the big scary secret government people are. Right? They're locking the place down, and uh, pretty soon the cop that stayed up there with the lady falls down the banister, and they put the cop and the firefighter that were bit in like a in this like textile shop they find. They do some classic interviewing all the people that live there, blah blah, right? But eventually they have to go and uh eventually the health inspector makes it into the building, and he's in like this big hazmat suit, and this is when shit really kind of hits the fan, and the two guys that were already bit become active or whatever, activated or whatever, and we learn that it spreads through saliva. That's why the bites are important. um and they have to go and try to get keys to a door that has like a tunnel or something. After all this chaos ensues, there's like they're told that there's a tunnel underground they might be able to leave through, and so they try to go get keys for it, but they end up just kind of trapped going further and further up, and they get to the penthouse of the building, and they break into the penthouse of the building, and they find a lot of crazy stuff, and
Oh
that's
yeah.
kind of then we can talk about the ending, but that's the whole story pretty much.
Yeah. Yeah. There you go. Yeah. Pretty cool. I don't want to talk too much about the sequels, but well, I don't know. Maybe we'll talk about the sequels at the end because I do think there's some interesting stuff I wanted to talk about. But I wanted to say one really smart decision I think at the beginning of the movie is they have Angela, Manuela Velasco, who's playing Angela Vidal. She has like pigtails, and which just makes her look like really innocent. And immediately you're like, oh, like pigtails are like a sort of a childish, like innocent hairstyle, I feel like. And I feel like that was just a smart decision to make us immediately sort of like care for her to some degree, because ultimately, like, we don't know anything about their backstory, which I'm glad. I'm glad there's not a scene where they're like, oh man, like they're explaining their backstory to each other and all that type of stuff. I'm glad the movie doesn't have that. It's kind of just keeps going with the crazy shit that's going down. Um, but I think that was a smart decision of a good way to endear us to this character, even though like I don't know that a lot of TV reporters are wearing pigtails like during their thing, but it works for the movie.
Yeah, totally. I think there's like those small details can definitely just make it more impactful without them throwing in stupid lines like, if she says something to Pablo that's like, we can't make this like the last time or something like what happened at the beach or like I don't know, something
Or
stupid
yeah,
like
or I need to get back to my daughter or something
yeah.
like that. Or oh my God, I'm so
Yeah,
worried.
like
My mom is sick. I'm so worried. I gotta get back to her about something like that, you know?
yeah, they avoid all that kind of exposition. There's no need to
Yeah.
know anything that happens before this.
Yeah. Yeah. Also, kind of an interesting thing in the movie is that there's a kid with a fever that the mom says has tonsillitis. And I think it turns out to be the zombie infection thing, right? And
Yeah.
there's a kid zombie in the movie,
Yeah.
which is
Yeah.
I mean, they kind of did that. Well, they did do that, I guess, in like the Dawn of the Dead remake a couple years before this. But still, I feel like having a little child zombie is kind of a taboo, like you're pushing the boundaries a little bit of like how far you're gonna go. And but I think it worked for the movie.
Yeah. We also never see the dog, but in theory, there's a dog zombie in this
Yeah.
you know.
Yeah, that's kind of he's sort of patient zero of the thing, sort of.
Yeah, which is interesting. Also just the like speaking of some of the like really creepy stuff that really works. Um uh well, maybe I shouldn't jump up there yet, but I was gonna say in the penthouse, there's all that creepy
Let's just talk
religious
about the
stuff.
penthouse. The
Yeah, I mean
penthouse
it's one
scene is awesome.
it's the highlight of the movie.
Yeah.
Uh Once they get in there, they quickly secure the door, which is good, but a little convenient. But none of the zombies that were on the stairwell ever try to break into that room.
Mm.
But it's dark as hell. It's they're using like the strobe flashlight, I think. They never find light switches or anything. And there's all of these religious like pictures and newspapers and all this stuff just like plastered on the walls. And it's so alarming.
Yeah. There's newspaper clippings about this Portuguese girl. Um, and I guess she is you know, well, she's the thing we see, the infected patient zero, I guess, but not really the dog.
Yeah. And that thing was, I mean, long limbs, kind of
Yeah.
distorted body features. Um,
Emaciated.
yeah. Oh, oh, yeah,
Yeah,
that
but
thing can live in your nightmares.
the dark, they really use the darkness and the lack of light really well to like where you kind of get glimpses of it and it's very creepy, but you never see it in full light, you know what I mean?
Mhm.
So it's very creepy.
Yeah. And then they, at one point, they're like looking into the attic. I think this is actually before we even see it, right? Because then the strobe light breaks, and this is when they have to use the night vision, and we get a lot of green images of this distorted, creepy, bodily thing roaming around, and
And
oh,
it can't see, I don't think. So she can't make any noise.
right,
Uh yeah.
yeah, and this is also so a little tidbit is they recorded this in the dark. Um, they actually used like an infrared camera and it was in total darkness here. So when like you see Manuela kind of tiptoeing and Pablo's saying like, come here. And they're like tiptoeing. That's like actual just pure darkness, like trying to navigate a room without making
Hmm.
noise, which is crazy.
That's cool.
um there's a lot of little stuff like that in this where like none of the actors actually knew like the whole script. Um or even sometimes like what was happening in the scene. Like when one of the firefighters falls down that banister early on, uh, supposedly nobody knew that was going to happen on the scene. So when they drop down, presumably a dummy, uh,
Well,
uh,
definitely a
um,
dummy.
and everyone reacts. Those are all like pretty authentic reactions, which is cool.
That's cool.
Um, but but anyway, so and then we're up in this attic or a penthouse still, and oh man. Also, like I think also just the discrepancy of like expecting the penthouse to be like the nicest apartment, right? And it's probably the biggest, but it's also ooh.
Yeah, it's just creepy. And that the size also is like you don't know how many rooms there are, like what could be around the corner kind of a thing. Like it's yeah, you definitely it works really well to be super creepy. Just the lack of light and everything.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. And so, oh man. And so one thing that I thought of during this time was like the Outlast video games, which
Yeah.
yeah, right? And that just the green hue night vision thing. It's I can't think of a movie that did like because like Paranormal Activities night vision is like blue for some reason, and
Mm.
I can't think of a movie that did the green hue things at least so effectively before this,
Yeah.
and it feels
And
very influential.
yeah, and Quarantine, the remake, the poster is the green night vision footage, and that's very, yeah, that definitely became a common trope in like that sort of found footage horror thing.
Yeah,
So yeah, this is probably where it starts, I think.
yeah,
Yeah.
and it lives on, right? I mean, Outlast video games are terrifying,
Mhm.
and and for
Are there
much the same reason.
are there many Outlast games? Because I played the original one, but I didn't know there was like a bunch of sequels.
There's the original, and then there's a massive DLC for the original that's lumped into what they call the trilogy with the original and the sequel. So there's really two, but the DLC is often considered a full game, I guess.
Okay, gotcha.
And then
Yeah,
there's
because the original is
also
pretty like small.
yeah, and then there's a Outlast Trials game that's out. That's like a games as a service thing. So
Hmm,
it's not really the same.
gotcha.
It might
Cool.
be like similar gameplay. I don't really know, but not.
Yeah. Cool. But yeah, this movie I think is very effective in like withholding information from the audience, just
Yeah,
where we don't know it's a zombie movie until probably over halfway, I'd say. And like, I don't know, obviously, with the old lady, like something's going down. There's some sort of like I don't know, you can kind of make inferences, but it could be like vampire type situation or who knows. But but yeah, I think it does a good job with holding that stuff and with the camera being in the camera's perspective the whole time, like the audience's perspective is limited also, so you really only know what the main characters know. So that also makes it creepy not knowing what's going on.
yeah, and I think like I don't know. I think for someone like if someone tells you that they don't like found footage, I think this is like a really good found footage movie that I think anyone can really kind of jump into because of just how effective it is at using that hidden information, the like authentic reactions, the relatively sometimes stable camera. Um, the stairs make it a little rough, right? I mean, it's really when they're going up and down the stairs, and then the the chaos. But
Yeah.
yeah,
Yeah, I agree. I could see, I mean, some people just don't like horror movies at all. So,
yeah,
I mean, yeah, in that case, probably Chronicle would be a better thing to
yeah.
watch.
Or like Super 8, maybe if you have you seen Super 8?
Yeah, I've never seen it actually.
It's about like
Is
kids
that
trying to make a movie.
right? Yeah. But is it all found footage
Um,
or like supposed to
uh,
be?
I don't even remember actually. It's been a while
Yeah,
since I was.
I don't know. I've never seen that. But But yeah, anyway, I agree. I think this is one of the better found footage movies that I've seen for sure. Um, but yeah, I mean, should I start talking about the sequels a little bit? I don't want to get into
Um,
spoilers, but
the only other thing I'd mention about this movie, and then we can totally mention some stuff about the sequels. Um, the only other thing I want to mention is well, two things I guess, which is uh, the budget was $2 million for this, which is the same as Dagger of the Dead. Cloverfield was something like 20 million, and Paranormal Activity was again like $50,000, something crazy. So pretty impressive for uh, the amount of money put into it, especially considering it's using a lot more people than something like Paranormal Activity. It's using a lot of makeup and special effects. Like uh, makeup effects and stuff.
yeah, yeah.
Um, and so I think that's pretty cool. Also, it is in this early realm of found footage that the glitch really starts to be a thing in found footage, as like more than just an indexing tool, and a more like intentional indexing tool. In like Blair Witch, there's some glitchy moments in the camera, mostly when they're literally just like pausing and unpausing, right? So like it's really an indexing tool in that way. But as found footage has progressed, like the glitch becomes more of like a supernatural piece of the movies in things like even in things like Paranormal Activity and like Gonjam Haunted Asylum and stuff. Um, but here it's really like at this kind of piece of like it's sometimes used as like it seems like an index of like something weird's about to happen, but it's clearly not a paranormal ghost thing. It's just they're going up the stairs and you get a little bit of a glitch, and then a few seconds later, you like, yeah, something's about to happen. But
Mm.
so it's an interesting piece where it's like it's still it is kind of an indexing tool, and it's not particularly for a supernatural reason. It's just really to like um to build up some anticipation, some anxiety, maybe just before something happens. Um, and I wouldn't say it's like a very like I wouldn't say that the glitch here is like the most effective glitch style. It's pretty remedial, but it's interesting to see kind of an early uh, piece that's transitioning from just indexing to kind of rational use of the glitch.
Yeah, I think of that glitch with like Unfriended and stuff like that. With that's common where it's like the supernatural things are glitching. This one, it's more like sort of early 2000s, like, well, I don't know. If it's because it's not tape, it is digital.
Right, which
So
is
but it's like usually I feel like it's normally when they cut.
yeah,
It's like
exactly.
before and after when they cut. But yeah.
Yeah. Anyway, so then that's pretty much it. So maybe a little bit about the sequels,
Yeah, I watched all four of these fucking things. And
which I haven't even done, and I love found footage movies.
there two is actually good. Two is like a parts of it take place at the same time as the original one, and it you learn a lot more, and they actually do kind of cool lore like building and explanation of things. There are some characters that are kind of annoying that I didn't love that I don't want to get into spoilers obviously for any of these sequels. Uh but there are a couple of like kind of annoying characters that maybe were a little unnecessary, but I feel like for the most part the movie is like a legitimately good sequel that builds on the first wreck. And I liked the direction it went. I think some people might not like it. It's sort of, without explaining or getting into any spoilers, it almost brings in another subgenre of horror movie, which I thought was very cool. Um, and then the third one uh, is so I think in the first one or maybe the second one, they mentioned that there's been a second outbreak at a wedding, and we never see it. But the third one is the outbreak at the wedding, and we see a guy who's been bitten. He got bit by a dog at the vet, and that is the dog from the first movie. So he's at the wedding. Outbreak happens. It starts off also. Rec 2 is all found footage. Rec 3 starts off as like found footage from like the uh wedding, people filming the wedding, And then maybe like 30 minutes in, for no reason, it just goes out of found footage. But
Cowards.
the even weirder part is that then there's like a little sequence that is found footage again for like 2 minutes, and then it goes back out, and then the rest of the movie is not found footage. Very strange decisions in there to do it that way. It actually wasn't like a horrible movie. It was like kind of, you know, I don't know. It was whatever. It definitely had a bit of a lighter tone, a little bit more campy comedy than the first two. But yeah, definitely would not recommend watching that one. I mean, unless you're like a completionist and you want to watch all four. And then so Rec 3 ultimately is kind of just a spin-off. And then Rec 4 actually and yeah, there are recurring characters in the fourth one, and it kind of picks up where two left off. And yeah, they're on a boat the whole movie, pretty much. So actually Rec 4 is a single location movie. Probably actually more than Rec 1 because they're literally just on a boat. Um, but yeah, Rec 4 was pretty boring in general, not not very good, and also none of it is found footage. So I think it kind of accentuate. I feel like the found footage maybe like if there's like bad acting or anything like that, it's sort of like not as prominent maybe. But I feel like
Mhm.
in the fourth one, that type of stuff is more prominent. And also in the fourth one, they kind of abandon the cool things that I liked about Rec 2 and the way that it expands on the lore of everything. They kind of just abandon that in Rec 4. So yeah, ultimately, Rec 2 I would actually recommend, but 3 and 4, I'd say if you're a completionist, you might, I guess you could watch them, but I wouldn't recommend them.
Dang. Um, that's a bummer. I remember, and you haven't seen Quarantine and Quarantine 2.
Never seen them.
I do remember I've seen Quarantine, and I would probably recommend Quarantine, but I'm just going off memory here, not a recent watch. And Quarantine 2 I haven't seen, but I would guess that I wouldn't recommend it, which is probably unfair, but whatever. Uh, Interesting though. I've actually, ironically, I've never seen any of the remakes. Sorry, the sequels for Wreck. Um, so uh,
I would
going into
recommend
this,
too. I mean, you love the
yeah,
first one. I would 100%. I mean, I
yeah,
saw to get into the ratings, I saw that you gave it 5 stars.
yes, I
So
did.
you got to watch number two.
Yeah,
I think you're gonna like number two.
yeah, I will watch number two. And I'll probably honestly watch them all. I'm gonna feel bad about it, but I'm gonna. Um, but
They're all on Tubi, so it
excellent.
just all it costs is your time, your precious time on this mortal coil.
The sad thing, so I know that like Rec 3 uh has kind of like a bad reputation in the found footage like circles at least. And I didn't really know why. I never really bothered caring to read up about it or anything. And I guess it's probably because they start to abandon the found footageness. Um, it's kind of ironic for the movie called Wreck. Wreck is like because they're recording, so it makes total sense. And it's even like stylized in a fun way with like the brackets and the little dot to show that
Yeah,
it's the recording on the screen. Um, and so why are you even calling it Wreck? Like,
yeah. Yeah, I get that. And I could definitely see like I'm not like a super fan of this series necessarily. So when the third one did that, I was kind of just like, oh, that was kind of dumb. But I could see where people who are huge fans, they'd be like, it would really like piss them off. So I could
yeah,
definitely see why people would be outraged about it, I guess.
yeah,
I just, I just don't have like a strong connection to the series, so I was kind of didn't didn't really bother me that much, I guess.
yeah. Well, the ratings. We're in the
Yeah,
ratings.
rating recap.
Excellent segue into the ratings, kind of where you already brought up my rating. I give this 5 stars. I think it's a very influential uh, movie to the found footage genre, to other media too, like with Outlast and everything like that. Um, I think it experiments with some really cool stuff. I love the idea of using like a real TV reporter, like Ghost Watch and Without Warning. Like over a decade before this did that. And and I think it's really cool that they continued that here. Um, and yeah, I think it's short, it's sweet. You're not wasting a lot of time if you don't like it, and it's not going to make you sick. It's not. I wouldn't say it's one of
Mhm.
those found footage movies, unless you're squeamish of blood. There's a little bit of blood, but
Yeah.
and so yeah, 5 stars for me.
Nice. Yeah. I gave it 3.5 stars. I liked it. I'm not a big found footage guy in general. I could definitely see if you're a fan of found footage movies, why this would be like a 5 star movie. It's definitely one of the best that I've seen at least. Um, but yeah, I appreciated the movie. I think it was creepy. The ending was very well done. Also, the last shot, very iconic of her getting like yanked into the darkness, and then it just ends. Like just a really great ending. And I like the practical effects for sure. Um, so I thought it was very well done, even though found footage isn't my favorite genre. So I liked it. 3.5. 3.5 is a good rating.
Yeah,
So
awesome. Yeah, I think that's a very good rating. I would say for um, like yeah, like found footage is not everyone's thing,
it was
and that's
interesting.
fair.
I was thinking about like my ratings. And I'm like, what is this? What do they like mean, sort of a thing? And I feel like to me, like 5 stars is like a masterpiece or like a personal favorite, like one of my
Mhm.
favorites. And then 4 stars is like a great movie. 3 stars is good. And then like two is bad, one is awful. Like that
Yeah,
would be kind of a general way to do it. So 3 stars, I feel like some people see 3 stars and they're like, oh, that's not very good. But 3 star movie is like a good, solid movie. So
yeah.
3.5, I bumped it up a little bit.
Yeah, totally. No, I agree. I think that's pretty similar to how I think of the ratings. I would say, yeah, like masterpiece at the top, right? If it's a personal favorite, if it's like super influential, sometimes I'll just bump stuff up for being influential. But yeah, uh, yeah. I mean, and so the general reception for this movie in our rating recap that we always do, this gets 90% on Rotten Tomatoes,
Damn. That's got to
82%
be,
audience.
sorry, I was
Oh
going to
yeah, go ahead.
say 82% audience, you said,
Yep.
and 90% critic. That's got to be one of the highest Rotten Tomatoes averages for a found footage movie.
It must be. I mean, I haven't gone back to like look at others generally, but I imagine that's pretty close to the top of the list if you could filter by found footage.
Yeah.
Yeah, so 90% Rotten Tomatoes, 82% audience, 7.4 out of 10 on IMDb, and 3.7 out of 5 on Letterboxd. So pretty good scores. 8 out of 10 averaging all that. Which is yeah, I mean that's a very respectable
Oh, yeah.
movie in like a genre that I think isn't everyone's cup of tea. So
Oh, yeah, definitely. That honestly is kind of higher than I expected just because found footage horror movies are generally not super well received, I feel like it's
yeah.
sort of a genre that people look down upon a little bit.
Yeah.
Um, but yeah, but this is definitely a good movie, so I'm glad it got good reviews also.
Yeah. And so I mean it sounds like it's time to transition
Yeah.
from a like a very modern kind of
Yeah.
well, whatever.
So something very 21st century into something very 20th century, I guess, to my pick, which I'm very glad I picked this because rewatch this, I'm like, this is just the fucking best. I mean, it's awesome. Rear Window, 1954 Alfred Hitchcock classic, my personal favorite Hitchcock movie. Yeah, it's a single location. It's almost all entirely from the perspective of Jeff's apartment. But at the very end, they go into the courtyard. So the single location is like the courtyard, basically. But yeah, I mean, this is like a super iconic movie. Obviously, people probably know the basics of it, but the basic story is Jimmy Stewart plays L.B. Jeffries, who's called Jeff. Everyone calls him Jeff. So I'm just going to call him Jeff because it's easier than calling him LB. Uh, but yeah, he's a sort of a traveling nature photographer. And he travels around the world, but he has a broken leg, so he is stuck in his apartment for weeks. And he's been passing the time by looking out of his rear window into the courtyard, and he's been sort of been sort of a peeping Tom on his neighbors, just looking into people's apartments. It's a hot summer day, so everyone has their windows open. People are outside. It's sort of the hustle and bustle. I think it's in New York City, so it's sort of a a bustling courtyard. And yeah, he Grace Kelly plays Lisa, who's sort of his uh, love interest, and she wants to marry him. And for some unknown, well, it is known because he's kind of an asshole and kind of a misogynist, and he has a particular lifestyle that he likes. But for some reason, Grace fucking Kelly wants to like bang this guy and marry him, and he's like, I just can't do it, I just can't do it. But yeah, and then Stella, played by Thelma Ritter, is sort of taking care of him. She comes by and helps him out. And yeah, he is looking out of his window and he suspects that one of his neighbors has committed a murder. And sort of the movie is him trying to convince people of it, looking for clues and all that. And yeah, I mean, it's a classic thriller and it's very inventive with the camera and everything. But yeah, I mean, this is a movie that I had seen and loved years ago, and this is my first time rewatching it, I think. And yeah, definitely holds up. Just I absolutely love it. So, what was your experience with Rear Window?
Yeah, this is also a rewatch for me, but it also it's been a while. And I remember really good thoughts about the movie. I remember thinking that it's a good movie, and I'd been kind of meaning to rewatch it for a bit now. Um, it's uh, it's awesome. It was a really good rewatch. It's this one thing that like really stood out to me this time around that I don't know if I really cared too much about the first time. It's just like how uh, the cinematography was very well done, I think, and even like the very opening shot, the curtains go up as
Yeah,
if a theater curtain, right? Um, and then you just get like a simple push in shot into the courtyard, and it's just so simple but so effective at showing us what we're going to be watching for the movie. Like it's
yeah,
great.
yeah. It's awesome. The cinematography is really great. The way the camera just sort of gracefully pans around the courtyard, and we're able to see into people's apartments through their windows, and we see the stories of all the characters are also so well defined, and you, without hearing them speak or anything, you just know what couple is what and everything that's going on. Like it's just so well done. Uh, everything about it is so well done. Um, but yeah,
Yeah,
the cinematography is great, and they really use the limitations of the staying within the perspective of Jeff's apartment to their advantage.
yeah. I mean, they built so this whole thing is a huge set in Paramount Studios, and which is a very impressive set.
Yeah,
Um, and the times when like the camera will be looking at a building, and you'll see like people in the rooms above and people in the rooms below, like moving on the same shot. It's like the direction needed to make all that happen is just very impressive. And there's the movie is just kind of like I could see this being a like master class in direction because you have to be coordinating effectively across a courtyard how people are moving over there with how people are moving directly above them without them obviously being able to see each other. And it's a very impressive piece of direction, which like to Hitchcock's uh, claim. He's a very famous, very well received, very prominent director, of course. And I think one of the reasons why like people think of this as one of his best and whatnot might be because of just the direction power needed to be able to do things like that, right? And I certainly agree. I think it's one of his best, if not his best.
yeah, yeah, definitely. Everything is so well staged and blocked and everything, and yeah, somehow like within all this limitations, it's never boring, in my opinion. Like it always keeps you invested. Also, it's so well written. The script is written by John Michael Hayes. It's based on a book by Cornell Woolrich. And yeah, the dialogue is like very crackling, like they're pretty funny. And there's like good banter with Stella and Jeff and Lisa also. And they're or even the detective too. Uh Detective Doyle. Like it almost has like a film noir style of like everyone being a little like wittier and like with better banter than they would be in real life. But that it's a movie and that's keeps it entertaining, you know what I mean?
Yeah,
Um, but yeah, definitely an awesome movie. Also, the tech it's shot in Technicolor, and the color is just really vibrant. There's like one shot that's really great of Lisa and Jeff by the window at sunset, and it's this like bright red sunset. And the movie, like with this it being all on a set and everything, like there is an artificiality to the look of it, and like the Technicolor is heightened colors and everything is like heightened, but I think it all works really well, and I just love the aesthetic of the movie. Like everyone has they all have blue eyes actually, and they're like very vibrant like blue eye, like the bright blue, and like the red lipstick or like clothes people wear, like everything just pops off the screen. And I just love it.
definitely. And even like the flowers, right? There's like a focus on the flowers at some points, and like a lot of the women are wearing green dresses for a couple scenes, and there's just a lot of times when those colors definitely pop. And I think that in combination with like the attention to detail on everything, like again with like the flowers and with just the coloring of what things will look like, um, really makes it, like you're right, it kind of has this like almost like surreal effect, but also it does feel very lived in because of just the way that motions work in it and the little attention to like the little lady that has the dog in the cart and she lets it go down on the little like pulley system. Like there's all these little things that just feel like so real. And even like the street, right? There's one time when you can actually see into the street, or maybe a couple times, but
A bunch of times, yeah.
yeah, and it's like it's a this fascinating like kind of surreal like courtyard just beyond the street, right? If you're at the street, like just beyond those buildings and that dark alleyway, there's actually this really bustling kind of interesting courtyard of people, um and I like you wouldn't expect that walking down New York. At least I'm not from New York, so I don't know. But
Yeah, right. But it's like it's kind of like its own little world, like insulated, and then you it's very smart to have that little window where you can not a window, but a little alley where you can see through, and you can see the hotel across the way and people walking by, and that's how you see um Thorwald like leaving and all that kind of stuff. So very smart, just design there of being able to see everything. Um, but yeah, the movie's themes also are very like fascinating. Like definitely within Hitchcock's filmography as like, you know, and just within like movies in general. I think this is kind of a movie about watching movies. Where like this is not my thought or whatever, but like the windows look like a movie screen and you're looking in and kind of just watching from the outside. And that like I think this movie does get to a certain appeal of voyeurism and like looking in on people, and those themes are it's very interesting, like the way just the way he looks at Miss Torso and the way he sort of like lusts after her kind of a little bit. But I don't know, it's not it is the 50s, so there is like the Hays Code, so they can't be too creepy about it, but I think it's like perfectly just creepy enough where it's like you get the what they're going for without it actually feeling too creepy. You know what I mean?
yeah, yeah. There's I think that theme of voyeurism is obviously like well written for this movie, but also, I mean, it's so prominent, right? Like we get these kind of POV shots through binoculars and camera lenses where we're literally snooping into people's, windows, right? And of course it's this heat wave, so people have to have their windows open, right? And like you were saying, the analogy of the windows being the kind of like a theater screen. Even with the blinds, the movie starts with the blinds going up and it ends with the blinds going down, and it really is kind of like the movie curtain, right, going up, or the screen kind of dropping and stuff, right, in today's world. But and yeah, so you get this like kind of intense voyeurism and kind of morbid curiosity of things, right? Like as you're peering into other people's worlds, um, you're kind of itching for something to happen, right? Like, um, much like when these TV recorders, to compare it to a movie that came out 50 years later, are like itching for the firefighters to have to go do something. There's this like morbid curiosity of wanting to watch something interesting unfold, um, which is begs the question of like, is that what he's seeing at first, right? Is he just seeing what he wants to see, something interesting, right?
Yeah.
So yeah.
Yeah, I mean, this movie also, I think, a thing said was a very positive aspect of Rec was withholding information from the audience. And this movie, that's like kind of what the whole movie's about, is that he doesn't have all this information and he's trying to figure out what's really going on. And as the audience, we also don't know, like, it's obviously very possible that it's like, oh, well, he could have just, who knows what the guy's doing? Like, it might not be a murder. We don't know. And but you still have that curiosity. And I think this movie actually like pre like I don't know what the word I'm looking for. Obviously, it's 1954, so true crime isn't like a big thing yet. But I really think it's interesting the way Lisa and Jeff like bond through like investigating this crime and trying to figure out what's happening. And like that's kind of how he falls in love with her. And there's also the shot after she like goes over and she like sneaks in and all that, and then she gets back. He like has a shot where he's looking at her and it's like he like is falling in love with her because she is like kind of adventurous and uh has that personality that, appeals to him. But like they're also really connecting when they're like, "Oh my God, do you think he killed her? Like, do you think blah blah blah?" Or like the way Stella will be like, he probably chopped her up into pieces and she's probably all over the city." And it's like now I feel like that stuff is kind of like normalized where we have all these court cases or true crime documentaries and stuff like that where it's like people um are just fascinated by crime and like that morbid curiosity of like of true crime. And I think this movie kind of captures that in 1954, which is like I don't even know when was In Cold Blood like written. Was that in the fifth? Because the movie came out like 60 or 61. So I feel like the book came out around this time too. I feel like
Yeah.
that's sort of the beginning of the true crime like as a thing.
Yeah. Um, and I think there's also this like this perspective of, his job is to like, he's a nature photographer, but like in a way his job is to do this kind of like similar snooping, but with animals or whatever, right? And so in a way, like he's never like, it seems like from the dialogue that we get that both Stella and Lisa are kind of, he has this like barrier with them, right? And that's kind of some of that conflict at the beginning with Lisa, with like he's just an idiot, right? Or whatever. And he's like, and it's clear that like she doesn't really understand his job or like why he cares about it so much and stuff. But then through the movie, while he's peering into other people's lives through this big window, he's also kind of sharing that experience and kind of letting these people into his life in a way that like he maybe has, it doesn't seem like he's maybe done before, which is also part of why it's interesting they bond here, because like this is like his life, and we don't like, it's interesting that he gets to show them his life by peering into other people's lives.
Yeah, yeah. Right, because he's stuck in this apartment, so he can't get out, basically. But yeah,
Yeah.
I mean, he is kind of like an asshole in the movie. Like
Oh
he's
yeah.
he's pretty misogynistic and has very and I mean they don't explain it, but I imagine maybe his parents had a bad marriage or so, or something has happened because this guy's like as soon as some like Miss Lonely Hearts at one point, Stella is like, oh well, hopefully she'll find her happiness one day, and he's like, yeah, and a man will lose his, or like always talking about how yeah, always talking about how women are nagging, and he's like, I think Stella maybe says like, women and men have discussions nowadays. And he's like, oh, maybe on Park Street they do, but where I live, they still nag. Or something. And
Yeah.
like, he is like kind of a misogynistic asshole. Um, but I don't know. I guess that's kind of the only way to justify him like being so against marriage. And he does have his reasons of like, he's like, yeah, you don't want to live this life with me. You don't want to travel around the world and like all the harshness of the lifestyle of being like a photographer, and he also doesn't want to be like a fashion and portrait photographer in New York, I guess. Um, although, but it's interesting because at the end, so like because of his broken leg, he has to basically become this voyeur, and he kind of ends up liking it. And then at the end of the movie, now both of his legs are broken and he's stuck in the apartment still, and he's laying there and he has a smile on his face like asleep. And then we see Lisa, she's like reading a nature magazine, then swaps to like Harper's Bazaar, which is just a funny last shot of the movie. But like also now he's happy with this woman and he's stuck at home. So I think the implication is that he ends up probably staying with her and staying home and not being this international nature photographer anymore. Um, so that's kind of like his character growth through the movie is recognizing that having this recognizing that marrying Grace Kelly might be a good idea, which is crazy, you know. Crazy he needs so to solve a murder to figure that out, but yeah.
Yeah. Well, it's interesting, like throughout the movie, he's stuck, right? He's helpless. And so when it comes time to investigate, right? Like the Stella and Lisa have to be the ones to actually go out and do the adventurous stuff. And like you were saying, that's kind of some of the stuff that he sees that makes him interested maybe. But it's also like uh, he like I'm sure he kind of wants to be the one doing that. And so in a way there's like this helplessness to him being trapped, obviously, but like in a way that also makes it um like makes him see these people in a different light. And that also I think helps with that character growth of like it's not just it's not that she just wants to come over and like she brings him like a gourmet dinner or something and offers him, a new job and stuff. And like it seems like she kind of wants to be like changing his life, maybe is what he's thinking. And he realizes here that like, she's kind of good for him or whatever somehow. But yeah,
Yeah.
and also in just the sense of like him always peering out the window at her, right? Because she has to go and do this stuff. Um, and of course, with Miss Torso and everything, there's like the male gaze as a big uh,
Yeah.
prominent piece of his of this film. I mean, in general, it's a lot of it.
Yeah. But well, that's kind of interesting that there is that shot of him like when she comes back from the other apartment. But yeah, you're right that he almost falls in love with her more after he's seen her from that voyeur perspective, where now he's more interested in her and more attracted to her, which is kind of crazy. But yeah, this movie also horny as hell.
Yeah.
Just a couple weeks ago, we talked about Rocky Horror being such a horny movie. This movie, 20 years earlier, pretty damn horny, especially considering the Hays Code is still like in effect and they can't show a lot of stuff. But you see at the beginning of the movie, Miss Torso, like her top like falls off and you see her back. You don't see her actual boobs or anything, but you see her bare back, and she's very scantily clad in a lot of the movie. And then also we see Grace Kelly like come out in her like nightgown, and obviously it's not like you don't see any nudity, but it's pretty racy for the 50s. And also just the voyeurism aspect of it all is like there's a sort of weird like kinkiness, horniness to it all that's like kind of interesting. That
Oh
just
yeah.
to get through such horniness, like through a lot of subtext and like implication is I don't know, it's just a lot of that's there in the movie for sure.
Yeah. And I think it also plays into a theme, like a bigger theme of just like hunger and lust, right? Of like there's the obvious like lust, hunger and stuff, like desire for people in the movie. Even so much where like you were saying, like Lisa's like literally crawling on him and he's like distracted by the window and
Yeah,
like what
they're literally like making out, and he's like, "Why?" That's when he says, "Like, why would a man leave his house three times with a suitcase and come back three times?" And like while they're like making out, he's just can't get his mind off the murder.
Yeah, and then there's one of the, is it Miss Lonely Hearts, I think, who's like sculpting something, and somebody comes up and is like, uh oh, what is it or something, and she says, I call it hunger or something, and it's just like literally like a torso with like an empty stomach, like a hole in the
Yes, that's
stomach.
not Miss Lonely Hearts. It's the lady below Miss
Oh,
Torso,
okay.
who's sort of
Okay.
just, I don't know, she's just an
Just
artist, I guess.
there's obviously Miss Lonely Hearts. And there's also like there's even one line in the movie where he's like, I think Stella asks him like, "Oh, how's the stomach?" or something, and he says, empty as a something, empty as a balloon or something. It was something so crazy." but but there's a lot of like just little like different moments where they talk about and kind of address desire, right? Whether it's lust desire or just hunger or whatever, and it feels very
Interesting.
prominent.
Yeah,
Found
I
it.
didn't.
Wait, empty
Oh,
as a football, he says.
empty as a football. That is, I guess, a football. I mean, it's air. It's empty. So I guess that makes sense, but kind of
Uh,
crazy.
anyway,
That
sorry,
one,
but
that
yeah.
one didn't catch on. That saying, but but
So
yeah,
yeah,
that is interesting. I didn't put that together of like the hunger sort and hunger as sort of a metaphor for desire and lust, definitely. Um, but yeah, I will say also Hitchcock definitely not known for being the most progressive with his female characters, but in this movie, I think it is very like obviously the character of Jeff is pretty misogynistic, but he as the movie goes on, he kind of on I don't know, is proven wrong in just how capable and intelligent Lisa is, and Stella is, you know, very funny and witty and like and just a smart character. Like I think the female characters are actually like pretty well written. And obviously there's like Miss Lonely Hearts who has, it's very empathetic to her and her situation. Um and yeah, I think the female characters are actually pretty well written for a Hitchcock movie in 1954. You kind of expect a lot worse, but
yeah. I definitely agree. I think you're right that it's interesting that it does contrast so much with like his character and even his like cop buddy that he has over. Um, they're very, yeah, misogynistic and stuff,
yeah, they're old
and
war buddies.
yeah, right. And so there's that interesting contrast, but there's like that scene when he's like watching Lisa and Stella like climb up the ladder and go onto the thing with the shovel, and they like snoop over, and it feels like kind of like a little mini spy thing where the two ladies are like the spies, right? And they're doing the real important work. Like his job is to like flash a light if he sees someone, and he messes that up, by the way.
Yeah.
Anyways, yeah.
Yeah. But yeah. Um, yeah, I don't know. I just think this movie's awesome. I don't know.
Yeah.
Also, very cute dog.
Yeah. Well, sad.
Yeah. But the dog's really cute.
The dog is really cute.
I like that little dog.
Yeah.
Um, yeah,
I They probably used the dummy. Don't worry.
yeah, hopefully. Imagine they're just like, oh, gotta kill it. Gotta kill it. There's no other way. There's no other way to do it. Um,
um, One
yeah.
interesting connection again with like this movie and Wreck, where one, I think this movie does the single location thing a lot better. Obviously. Um, One, because it's actually more of like one single location. It's also a very interesting, like we already talked about this location being very interesting, full of people, very dynamic. Um, but in Rec, you have like some different rooms, and the penthouse is obviously very unique, and you have like the textile shop that's a little more unique, and that's like interesting. I think that's an important part of single location movie making, is like having distinctive places in your location. And it's just fascinating that while we never leave this one window, our single courtyard location is still so, we can see so much of it. We have like this wonderful perspective where we really get to see into people's rooms and all the little details in their rooms. We get to see the courtyard. We get to see Jeff's little apartment. Um, but uh, but I think an even bigger connection between this and Rec is interestingly the voyeurism, because I think found footage movies are very uh, like known for kind of this voyeuristic perspective where you literally see someone from someone else's perspective, right? And in this you get that with like the camera and binocular lenses. Um, and so it's very interesting that we kind of pick two movies that in a way like have a lot to do with voyeurism in a way. I mean, I think this is a little more upfront about its voyeuristic
Yeah.
nature, but I think found footage is generally very engulfed in kind of a voyeuristic uh,
Yeah.
insight.
And that's partially like an appeal of just movies in general,
Yeah,
of seeing into people's lives. And a kind of a crucial part of Rear Window is like no one ever looks back at Jeff, and then except at the very end. And that sort of shot of him looking at him, and it's kind of like shocking because like when you're watching a movie, you're no one's gonna look back at you. You can just watch it and whatever. But but yeah, I think that that is an aspect of watching but not being seen. And then when
mm-hmm.
he's seen at the end, it's like kind of a shocking moment.
Yeah,
Um,
definitely.
but yeah. Um, yeah, I don't know. Also, there's like the idea of movies as like an empathy machine that I always think about, and it's like the Roger Ebert thing or whatever. But uh Miss Lonely Hearts, he really like I don't know, they have a lot of empathy for her and obviously like uh her situation and through just like watching her through the window. You know what I mean? Sort of the same way you could watch a movie and empathize for someone that you don't know and well, that's just made up. But but they normally like that would just be your neighbor that you just walk by and you're like, oh hey, and you just move on with your day and you don't know, but he's able to have empathy for the shitty situation that she's in. Um, but yeah, and then how does the Miss Lonely Hearts thing? Because she's like gonna kill herself, and then she's like writing a note, right? And
Yeah,
then oh, the music,
the music stops
the
her.
yes, the music stops her. And at the end, she's in the songwriter's place. And she's like, "Oh, I can't tell you how much this music meant to me,"
Yeah,
which is a nice ending for. I love the ending too of
yeah.
like seeing everyone afterwards, and like the couple has a new dog and all that stuff. So great
It's
ending.
also interesting with the different windows. We kind of have a different perspective on like thinking of them as movies. We kind of have a different perspective on different genres where we have like the married couple, where we have a brief moment of romance. We have the musician's lair where we have like kind of a party music vibe. We have like the obviously Thorwald's place that's like a thriller kind of horror movie maybe. And then we have like Miss Lonely Hearts that's kind of this drama kind of sad. We have Miss Torso that's kind of maybe just I don't really know the genre for that, I guess, but whatever. But we kind of have like all these little mini genres that we kind of have like a little mini movie of, and like maybe with the dog lady is kind of like a little comedy because she's kind of the comic relief for the most part.
Yeah, and they
Um,
get rained on. They're like
yeah,
sleeping outside. They get rained on.
right. So you kind of have like a little mini genre for each of these. And so it's almost like maybe if he focused more on the people that got rained on, this could have I'm not being totally serious with this, but like, you'd have a comedy from the perspective of Jeff's window or something.
Yeah, yeah, I see what you're saying now. I didn't think of that, but yeah, it makes sense. And then Hitchcock is like, well, yeah, the thriller, that's the one to focus on.
Yeah,
So
exactly.
yeah, yeah, that's cool. I never thought of it that way. Um, but yeah, also with that newlywed couple with the horniness through implication is like they're whatever they're making whatever. He sees they walk in, then they go back out and he carries her in and it's nice and romantic and they close the thing. And then he goes out to smoke and she's like, whatever his name is, she calls him back in. And it's like, is it implied that like they're banging all day and then he goes to have a cigarette and she's like, come back, let's have more sex. I don't know if that's what's implied or if it's implied that she's already like nagging him and he's like, oh man, I can't even
Oh.
smoke a cigarette out the window. So I wasn't sure what exactly they were going for. Because I was like, I could definitely see it being either one within the context of this movie.
Yeah.
But yeah.
Yeah, I could definitely see that as either. Um, well, I know you also watched the remake for this.
Yes. Well, one more thing I wanted to say
Yeah.
about the movie. I do love the movie. The ending, Thorwald admits everything really, really quickly. That's the only thing about the ending that's like literally immediately. He's like, "All right, I killed her. I buried her here." Blah blah blah. And they're like, "Okay, we figured it all out." Like
Yeah.
that. That is probably the silliest part of the movie. And I think Hitchcock does have like his endings aren't always the best. Obviously, there are iconic ones like North by Northwest, and but then there's like Psycho, where it's like the whole movie's great, and then the very ending is like a kind of crummy scene of them explaining the psychology of Norman Bates and stuff. So
Yeah. If you can
like,
watch Psycho without those last 15 minutes, it's a better movie, right? Like,
yeah, yeah. So that is probably the weakest part to me, where but I get like
yeah.
they felt the need to explain the things for the audience to get the for us to know what happened. Um, But other than that, I think the movie's pretty awesome.
I feel like it's interesting too, because almost without that explanation at the end, I mean, if he didn't attack and explain everything, there still could have been some ambiguity, maybe. Like if somehow like he doesn't go into the apartment, like I don't know how you really end it then, but like it's not fully clear if he really did kill the wife until really the ending, right?
I think the yeah, yeah, definitely. I think the only other way to do it that would have been maybe I don't know. It might have been I really like the last shot of we just pan all the way around and then we get inside the room. Like it's a really great last shot. I think the only other way to do it would be the whole thing happens and then you have a final scene at the end where like Stella comes by and he's like explaining to her like, "Yep, he did this. He buried her over here. Turns out that's what happened. He admitted it all." And then she leaves, and then maybe you have the final thing. So,
Yeah,
but that also kind of would have been like an inelegant way of just explaining it all. So it's kind
right.
of a tough situation to be in.
Yeah, I mean, it's almost a consequence of leaving so much information unrevealed until the very last moment. But it's all, I mean, that works out so well for the whole movie, right? Like it keeps the movie very thrilling and very exciting and engaged and keeps you engaged. But yeah, I mean, at the end, like, and then you have to reconcile at the end with you have to you have to say everything still. Like,
Yeah. Yeah.
yeah,
So that was probably like my only honestly, probably my only problem with the movie. I feel like the movie's so well shot and directed, very well written, and all the performances are really great, especially like Jimmy Stewart, Grace Kelly, and Thelma Ritter. They're all just like fantastic, iconic performances. And yeah, I just loved rewatching it. So, sometimes I just watch a classic movie and it's just like, it's just the best. It's like,
yeah,
this is awesome. This is just why movies are so great. And
yeah.
this movie definitely has that effect for me.
Yeah, I gotta say also, I rented the 4K for this. And the 4K transfer is really good for this movie. So
Oh,
um,
nice.
if uh, everyone has like a 4K TV, I don't always like rent up to the 4K just because sometimes I'm not particularly caring about that. But for some of the like watching this in 4K was a really good experience. I think if anyone has the ability to like get the 4K disc, I think it's probably like a Kino thing or something, but or to rent it in 4K or something. It's a really nice transfer. It's yeah, so well done.
Nice. Okay, great. I got so I had like a DVD box set of like I think it's like five. I think it's Rear Window, Psycho, The Birds, North by Northwest, and maybe one other movie. I don't know.
Maybe
I don't remember.
Vertigo or
Oh yeah, it is Vertigo actually. Good call. Yeah, and so I had that DVD box set for the longest time, and then for this I was like, well, I should watch it on Blu-ray. So I bought a Blu-ray box set with like 15 Hitchcock movies on it, and I've seen.
wow.
I think it has all those five from my previous DVD box set, but it has like a bunch of other ones. I've seen maybe like half the movies in there, and like half of them I haven't seen yet. So I'm definitely excited to dig into some of the other stuff. Like So they have some of his lesser known movies like the Trouble with Harry's on there, and like uh Torn Curtain, which I think is, or no, Family Plot is his last movie. So it has some of his later stuff, and it also has like early stuff from, has stuff from like literally the 40s to the 70s. So
Wow.
pretty cool box set. It's just regular Blu-ray. I don't know if it's available on 4K, but I just got the regular Blu-ray of it. But even the Blu-ray of Rear Window, which is the only one I've seen in the box set, it looked really, really good too. So
Awesome.
yeah. But all right, I guess. Oh yeah, Rear Window remake. All right, am I supposed to talk about that? It's not good. It's well, you haven't seen it, right? So
Now,
yeah, it's Christopher Reeve made the movie like after he had his accident, and he is plays a character who's at the beginning of the movie. You see he was in a car crash, and then he, is has like a spinal injury, and he has, you see him in rehab and stuff like that. And eventually, he gets to his apartment, and there's a rear window type situation where he's creeping out his window, and he sees what he suspects is a murder. And yeah, it's pretty bad. It's made for TV. It's the pacing is very, very slow. It's only like 90 minutes and it feels longer than the original Rear Window. Like at one point I was like halfway through and I checked and I was like, "Oh my God, I can't believe there's like 45 more minutes." I thought it was going to be like 15. Like I was like, "Oh my God, this is bad." So I think ultimately the best part of the movie is actually the stuff that has nothing to do with Rear Window. Like it's kind of interesting like, oh, this seeing Christopher Reeve with after his accident and seeing that type of like representation of disability in a movie is kind of interesting. And I think the idea of putting that character in a thriller like could be good, but it's just really I mean, it's just the pacing is bad and the writing is pretty bad, a lot of rough lines. And yeah, ultimately not really worth seeing. I think if it wasn't titled Rear Window, it would be less maligned probably because people would just forget about it, that it even exists. Would be, you know, but it being a remake of Rear Window is like, why are you doing this? This is just a horrible idea. So yeah, I would not recommend that. But a movie I would recommend that is very inspired by Rear Window, I think, is Watcher. I think, did I talk about this like recently?
uh, you might have, I forget, but yeah.
Yeah, I watched it maybe like a month ago or so, just unrelated. And very good movie of an American marries this Romanian American guy. He moves to Romania for his job, and she's sort of isolated in Romania. She's trying to learn the language, but she doesn't really speak it. And she is looking out her window. She sees someone that she thinks is looking in her window, and it doesn't have the same like one single location conceit of Rear Window, which is good. But it's a very good. It obviously Rear Window is a classic. I gave it 5 stars. It's like an amazing movie. This movie's Watcher is not on that level, I would say, but it's an interesting sort of expansion and like modernization of a similar idea of like voyeurism and also like loneliness, but also the main character being a woman. There's a lot of different factors like having that female perspective from the protagonist, and it's directed by a woman also. I think it's actually a very well done version of this type of movie. So yeah, I would say don't watch the Rear Window remake from 1998, but if you want to watch something that's similar, I'd say Watcher is a good thing to check out.
Nice. Um, there's also, I mean, like it's interesting because it's kind of inspired similar stuff too with like there was the woman, I just had to look up the name. I don't know how I had to look up this name. The woman in the window from a
Yeah,
couple of years ago. Um and from 2007 when Rec came out, there was also Disturbia, right, with Shia LaBeouf. And instead of having a broken leg, he's like under house arrest with a leg anklet. There you go.
yeah,
Legs. Um and so definitely a whole like I there's probably a list on Letterboxd of like Rear Window esque movies or something like very similar
yeah.
conceits. So yeah, very cool. I also gave this 5 stars to jump into the ratings.
Nice. All right.
Um, yeah, it's even better than I remembered, and I remembered liking it. But again, I was very impressed with the cinematography this time. Um, the writing was great. It was very thrilling. I feel like you can't really. take your eyes off the screen, right? And just again, like so much thematic relevance and stuff. So it was great, awesome. Uh,
Yeah.
they
Hell
should
yeah.
teach it.
Yeah. Yeah, definitely. I mean, rating recap. This might be our highest rate average rating, I imagine.
This has a 98% on Rotten Tomatoes, a 95 audience score, an 8.5 out of 10 on IMDb, and a 4.4 out of 5 on Letterboxd, bringing it to an average of 9.15, which is tied for our highest with Spirited Away.
Oh yeah. Yeah, Spirited Away. Yep, that makes sense.
So those are our two highest uh, rated movies according to our recap here, which doesn't include like Metacritic and some other stuff, so whatever. But
Yeah.
um, whatever. You know what? We do it the way we want to. So
Yeah, yeah, it's all good. All right, cool. Hell yeah. Definitely holds up. I'm glad that it's still so well regarded.
yeah, what a great couple of movies to watch.
Yeah. Yeah, this was fun. Definitely a fun topic. Speaking of topics and categories, should we pick our next category? I
Category Cup time. Here we
Category Cup
go.
time. All right. I don't know. I mean, I guess this episode is like pushing 2 hours. I feel like that Rear Window discussion. I don't know if that time flies when you're having fun talking about Rear Window, I guess.
That's true. I mean, the voyeuristic perspective is
All right. Category Cup is here. I'll be doing the honors. Will be also, just so everyone knows, this I believe is episode 17. For episode 17.5, our plan is we're gonna do a tier list of Stanley Kubrick movies. I think it'll be fun. If you go to our YouTube channel, we'll probably figure out a way to share a screen and you can have a visualization of where we're putting them in the tier list. And yeah, that I'm looking forward to that episode. That'll be fun.
oh yeah.
Uh, and then yeah, after that, we'll do this. I'm pulling the category now. Here we
Insert drum
go.
roll here.
Ooh, remakes. I won't be picking Rear Window remake, I'll tell you that much.
Wow, that's funny. Remakes,
So
cool.
remakes. Okay, so I think you put this in the cup. I'm curious, like, is the idea that we're going to talk about the original and I guess we'd each just pick a remake.
Yeah, I think that's the
Okay.
idea. But it would be hard, I think, to talk about only the remake.
Yeah.
So as a stipulation, I guess, for our next episode, our next full episode, we will probably have spoilers for like four movies, but it's really because they're remakes.
Right.
Uh,
One of the first things that comes to mind for me is The Thing, the John Carpenter The
ooh,
Thing, but
oh yeah,
well, there is an interest because it is a remake of a movie, but also I think it's just based on a short story. So like,
right. Well,
is
the thing, yeah,
is it just an adaptation of like a different adaptation of a book?
because the thing and that movie that it's a remake of
The Thing
from
from Another World.
the thing from another world. Thanks. Um, yeah, they're not yeah, like I've never seen that original, so I don't know how much of a remake it really is versus just a revisiting the original thing. The
Yeah,
thing is that a sequel though, the 2011 one,
it's a prequel.
a prequel, so that doesn't count because that's not a remake. All right.
No,
Um,
also not a good movie.
no, no, but yeah, that's an interesting question. Does that one?
I will say I'm not going to be picking the Total Recall remake. Horrible,
Uh,
horrible remake.
yeah,
Completely
that's
unnecessary.
Yeah, that's the interesting thing. There's like something like The Fly, right? A remake from another one like the 50s movies or something.
Yep.
Um, there's like those like 80s kind of remakes that are like probably more enjoyable to watch than some of the like 2000s remakes.
Yeah. Yeah. There's also Suspiria, the Luca
Oh
Guadagnino
yeah.
Suspiria remake. I actually prefer the remake to the original, which is,
Oh,
I mean, some people would probably say it's sacrilegious, I guess, but I liked it better.
The Blob, another one of those 80s remakes of a 50s movie.
That's funny. I've actually seen the original Blob, but I haven't seen the 80s one.
Oh, see,
But
I've
I've heard,
seen the 80s, but I haven't seen the
there you go. The original is like, it's okay. It's not
original.
that great. But I've heard the 80s one is good, right? Doesn't it have like cool like
Yeah.
practical effects and stuff?
Yeah, that's why I've watched it. And we're back.
We're back. We picked our movies. I don't know what's going to get cut. Probably some of that's going to get cut. Maybe
Oh
I'll
yeah,
love it.
probably.
Yeah. But yeah, so I have decided to go with Insomnia, the Christopher Nolan movie. So I guess officially the Christopher Nolan Insomnia is my choice, but I'm going to be watching both the original and the remake before next episode.
Yes, and I will also. And I've picked Dawn of the Dead, the 2004 Zack Snyder remake of the original 1978 George Romero movie. And I will also be watching both of these because it's going to be hard to talk about a remake without watching the original. So we've got some homework to do. Four movies.
Yeah. I think it's also good that we picked movies that don't have like a ton of sequels and stuff like that. Like it's kind of just a pair of original and remake. It's
Yeah,
not that complicated. I don't have to
right.
watch four rec movies, you know.
Yeah, you didn't have to do that, but
No, no, I had to. I had to. It was contractually obligated. Um, but yeah, all right, cool. I think that'll be a fun episode. Dawn of the Dead and Insomnia. Also both very close in uh Insomnia's 2002, Dawn of the Dead's 2004. So,
yeah.
but different
Insom of the Dead,
oh,
Dawn of the Dawnsomnia Dead,
Insomnion of the Dead.
Insomnion of the Dead,
Or Dawn of the Dinsomnia.
Insomnium of the Dead is good.
That sounds like a Nazi zombies like map or something.
Yeah, yeah. Um, well, be sure to catch us next week with some Kubrick talk. Uh,
Yeah.
don't feel obligated to watch all of Kubrick's movies before next week.
Yeah, we
Uh,
won't do spoilers for any of those movies.
yeah, we'll talk about them. We'll talk about the legacy and the impact of them and how they connect maybe a bit, but we won't necessarily spoil anything. Uh, so feel free to join us for that, and then catch up on some remakes for the week after that: Dawn of the Dead and Insomnia.
Yeah, that'll be fun.
All right. And in the meantime, you guys can follow us on all of your podcast streaming sites. You can follow us, subscribe on YouTube, leave us a comment. You can follow us on our letterboxed, Mind Your Movies, all one word. On there, we've got all of our links to everything else. You know how to find us. Stay in touch with us that way. Leave us a good review if you enjoyed it. Share it around if you think someone else might want to hear us talk about uh, Rec or Rear Window. And we'll catch you guys in the next one.
See ya.